Good evening. Welcome everybody here for Wednesday night class. Before we begin, I ask Grant Mulligan if he will lead us in a word of prayer. Let's bow. Amen. Thank you, Grant. So this quarter has been the attributes of God, and we've been doing this in the auditorium to coincide with what the kids are learning in their classrooms, and it's kind of to help generate conversations at home. So hopefully, what we talk about tonight about God is wise, that you'll also pick up some stuff from your kids and what they talked about in their classes. And just a recap of where we've been. We've talked about God is powerful. That was Genesis 1, starting with creation. We talked about God is everywhere with Adam and Eve in Genesis 2. Talked about God is all-knowing with Cain and Abel in Genesis 4. And last week was the story of Noah. God is trustworthy in Genesis 6 through 10. So tonight we're going to talk about God as wise. And, anytime you talk about wisdom or being wise is always for me that's kind of a daunting subject, because I don't think any of us think that we are wise. I think we all pray for wisdom, which is what we need to do. So our text will be Genesis 11, and we're going to read about the Tower of Babel. But before we start there, what is wise? If somebody says the word wise, what comes to your mind? What do you think of? Steve? Okay. Yeah, so the two words, wise and wisdom, are kind of used synonymous, right? I had wise is like a characteristic of wisdom, and wisdom being the use of knowledge. If you look at, whenever I have a question about a word, I always go to Webster's, right? That's been around forever. But it says, being wise is characterized by wisdom, marked by deep understanding, keen discernment, and a capacity of sound judgment. So if you look at wisdom, wisdom is the ability to discern inner qualities and relationships, good sense, general accepted belief, and accumulated philosophical or scientific learning. So basically you have insight, judgment, and knowledge. And I tend to put things in an equation sometimes. So I put it like this. Wisdom is knowledge plus understanding. So now that we have a definition of what wisdom is, it's the know-how of the knowledge that we get. It's how do you put this knowledge to work? So let's turn to Genesis 11, and if I can get somebody to read verses 1 through 9. Genesis 11, 1 through 9. Any takers? Tyler? Okay, so I should have had you read, and I apologize, I'll pick this up, Genesis 10, verse 32. So this is all after the flood. I think sometimes we take the Tower of Babel and set it on its own little deal, but let's look at Genesis 10, 32. And this is after it talks about the descendants of Noah. It says, these are the clans of the sons of Noah, according to their generations in their nations, and from these the nation spread abroad on the face of on the earth after the flood. So, and then we have Genesis 11 talking about the people coming from the east to Shinar. So when you look at this story, what are some key things that you see? What sticks out in your mind as you read this story of the Tower of Babel? And in perspective, let's keep that we're talking about God is wise. Al? Correct. Yes. Okay. What else? Allison? It is still true. You are correct. Yeah, I have down here, wow, man's biggest problem. Not so much the language, but what goes with it, right? What else do we see? Ed?
It's fascinating to me that after he commanded us to fill the earth and subdue it, we got comfortable with being in one place. And God was wise enough to really kind of let us do a whole lot. And he's already exhibited that quality of wisdom of letting other people make decisions, giving them freedom, and yet putting in boundaries with the situation of Abel, the situation of the flood,
Right. Right. Yeah. No, it's he leads us to that point, and then hopefully we go in the right direction. But what always happens? Man does his own thing, right? We make a mistake. Grant, what are you going to say?
Yeah, you just look at this and I think like, you see the same level of creativity in God here that we saw in the beginning, because He creates something new, just like He had given Adam when He was beginning, language. And of all the things, if it was me, if I was looking at this people, the easy thing is for me to rely on omnipotence, and I'll just pick it up and Google where I want to go.
Right.
Or where I want them to be. But He outsmarts us. Because He says creative power. So we're not just going to change you the way I need to change you. Yet, what He wants is to do something He's going to make you. He wants to give you roots to spread out and get away from each other. How do we instill it into you?
One of the excuse me, one of the reasons why I wanted to look at verse 32 in chapter 10 was after the flood, man had dispersed. They had moved out. And then all of a sudden what happens in chapter 11, verse 1? They all start coming back into one place. So we as humans, we want, as God's people, we want to come back together. We want to be together. And God's going, okay, that's okay, but you're doing something here you ought not to be doing. So we're going to fix that. We'll just change everybody's language and disperse them. Phil.
So we should never be surprised that God is not surprised.
Correct.
When God walked on the scene, it wasn't like He discovered something that, oh, look what they did, so now I need to do this. So along with what and Grant said is so true, and that's the true wisdom that through His divine providence, He has planned it to go that way. He does give man the free will, yes, but look what they did with that free will.
Right.
It's not like He was surprised by what they've done. He just created something better out of what they thought. It's all.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we talked about the language. We talked about how the people moved into one place. One of the things that I picked up was here's man, and he's going to build a city, and he's going to build a tower to the heavens. And why did the people want to build the tower to the heavens? I mean, it tells us right here. Exactly. Wouldn't be despised, right? Oh, you're right. So we won't be dispersed over the face of the earth. Right. So they're coming back together so that they can have that oneness as people and create a name for themselves also, right? They want to create a name for themselves, which when I read that, I'm like, well, if all the people come back to one place, who else is out there that they're going to impress? Or, yeah, who's coming after them? And so that's one of my questions that I have to do some more research on and see what I can come up with. But so yeah, the one thing that I picked up with, you know, when you talk about the languages and how man is, and probably one of our biggest problems that we see in this first 4 verses is man's pride, because man is trying to create his own thing. Ben?
Yeah, to that point, I think there's the on the surface thing that they're telling themselves why they're doing this. And then there's God gets down in verse 4, in verse 6. The Lord said, behold, they are one people, and they have all one language. Only the beginning of what they will do, and nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible. Right? He sees the real intention of what he's getting at, which is they're going to be self-reliant.
Right. And has pride ever gone away? No, we still have that problem of dealing with pride even today. And the fact that there's the lack of humility. Al? Yeah, no, he's seeing what's coming up because he's already seen it once, right? Before the flood. He saw man doing his own thing and become wicked and corrupt. And it displeased him so much that he destroyed everybody. So I think he's seeing that maybe circling back around, and here's man trying to do this again. Ed?
It's fascinating how he does this because with the flood, he just killed everybody except for Noah.
Mm-hmm.
You can go back to Abel and Cain, and he said Cain out. He said, the ground's not going to work for you, so you have to figure out how to do this. This time he does something that's kind of internal to human culture. He doesn't send external circumstances from the rain or anything like that, or the ground not growing anything. But he kind of gets in our own head. He confuses our language. And as already been mentioned, once we get to where we're not thinking the same thoughts, and we're on different pages, then we're going to get separated and divided and so forth. And when you say that's terrible, in some respects it is. But it also separates the folks who want to do God's will from the folks who don't. And later on in the 12th chapter, you got Abram who comes along and this Ur of Chaldees, where all these people are idolaters, but he's not. He's interested in God.
Right.
He still has to pursue this stuff. And so it's interesting that he does this in a way that, as Allison said, is continuing. And it's very profound because it's something internal to our culture, our language.
Yeah. That's and you think about. I mean, you brought up a new one. I've never even heard of that before. So, but I think about all the languages that we have that most of us know, and to me, it's when I know of a person who speaks 3 languages, I'm like, wow, that's I have a hard enough time with English. So, somebody who speaks 3 languages, and ours is probably one of the hardest. But it's amazing how we work, and God knows that. He understands that. So moving on, God dispersed the people across the face of the earth again. So, like we said, he said, okay, these languages, here you go. Now, go do your thing, and so how does this story, and I'm going to kind of, this is not really a cap off, but how does this story show God's wisdom? I mean, we kind of talked about a couple of things, how, God knows what he wants. He's trying to get mankind. Really, he wants the relationship that he created from the beginning. And man keeps muddling it up. He has some help, though. Man's weak. Randy? Yeah. If we could only have just a smidgen of what God has so that we could help more people, right? It's I guess God having patience is an understatement. Roy, go ahead. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he does it pretty quick, right? Pretty quick. Al? Right. Yeah. Well, and he said he wouldn't destroy man again. So he had to come up with another plan. And I agree. I think the Tower of Babel was like an idol for man, but I also think that man was trying to be like God. Man was trying to be above everything, looking down, but they forget that God is above, over them all the time. Ed?
Yeah, we were in this room, most of us have read Genesis or the Bible, or at least heard the basic story. And so one of the things that we have to notice about this particular story is that this is just part of a bigger picture. The wisdom of God is shown in Genesis 12, where he's going to bring blessing to all the nations of the world. All the
Mm-hmm.
folks who've been separated by these languages are going to be blessed by this descendant of Abraham, which we know is Christ. And that's why, in Ephesians, the first chapter, and in Peter and First Peter and other places, he says this is a plan before the foundation of the world. So this wasn't a God who's kind of just read and react, right? This is a God who had a plan that everybody can be holy and blameless and loved through Jesus Christ. Everybody from every nation.
Right.
And he brought that about in Jesus Christ. And this is part of that bigger picture. And that is extraordinary.
Right. Yeah. Danny. Danny. Brady. Okay. Yeah, it's God's wisdom, right? Yeah, exactly. Terry. Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Jerry. Yeah, he says, here you go. This is the path I want you to follow, but this is all I'm going to give you. You got to figure out the rest. Grant.
One of the things we talk about a lot is that we are not born with wisdom. We're born foolish and have no experience. And it's only by years of experience of how the world works, how other people behave, how they respond to things, that we begin to have wisdom and realize, okay, I should be a hotbed, I should hold my tongue, all kinds of things that lead us to be wise. We have to make mistakes to learn wisdom. Observe maybe mistakes or observe successes. But in Proverbs chapter 8, wisdom is given voice and speaks about herself. In verse 22 it says, "The Lord possessed me at the beginning of his work, the first of his acts. Behold, ages ago I was set up at the first, before the beginning of the earth." So we realize that wisdom is inherent in God. He doesn't gain wisdom through trial and error. But it comes from. He decides what it is.
Right.
And you see that in this Tower of Babel, because God doesn't sit there and think, what should I do? What do you think's going to work? He knows what will work.
Mm-hmm.
He knows us. He understands us as creation. He knows if I do this, it will have its intended effect. It will disperse humanity. It will keep them from getting too cocky, thinking that they can do impossible things. I will give them, change your language, change the way your vocal cords work, change the sounds you're capable of making, and what you're able to talk to some people in our energy, and it will accomplish like her.
It's the Creator knows the creation. And great segue into my next little part here. Kind of a contrast between God's wisdom and man's wisdom. So, who in the Bible, this is a softball question, as Randy would say, who in the Bible asked God for wisdom? Solomon, right. So I want to look at Solomon's story real quick. If I can get somebody to read, these are the same story, but a little bit different. But somebody to read 2 Chronicles 1, 7 through 13. And somebody to read 1 Kings 3, 1 through 15. Jack, 2 Chronicles 1, 7 through 13. Yes, you can read that one. Go ahead.
That night God appeared to Solomon and said to him, "Ask what I shall give you." Solomon said to God, "You have shown great and steadfast love to David my father, and have made me king in his place. O Lord God, let your word to David my father now be fulfilled. For you have made me king over a people as numerous as the dust of the earth. Give me now wisdom and knowledge to go out and come in before this people. For who can govern this people of yours, which is so great?" God answered Solomon, "Because this was in your heart, you have not asked for possessions, wealth, honor, or the life of those who hate you, and have not even asked for long life, but have asked for wisdom and knowledge for yourself, that you may govern my people, over whom I have made you king. Wisdom and knowledge are granted to you. I will also give you riches, possessions, and honor, such as none of the kings who ruled before you, and none after you shall have the like." So Solomon came from the high place to the king, from before the tent of meeting in Jerusalem, and he reigned over Israel.
Okay. Now, 1 Kings 3, 1 through 15. Mr. Bird.
Solomon made a marriage with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Took Pharaoh brought his daughter into the city of David, was extended in his own house, on the house of the Lord, and the walls on Jerusalem. People were sacrificing in the high places, because no house was yet built for the Lord. Solomon loved the Lord, and walked in his statutes, David his father. And he sacrificed and he offered to him on Jerusalem.
So like I said, both of these accounts are pretty close to each other. The reason why I wanted to read them both is because in 1 Kings 3, it starts out with the king of Egypt, or the Pharaoh of Egypt, sent a wife, or a daughter, his daughter, to be Solomon's wife. We don't see that in Chronicles, but trying to pick up as much of the story as we can. The other thing that we see is that the kind of wisdom that Solomon asked for. What did he ask for? What kind of wisdom did Solomon ask for? Did he ask for God's wisdom? Or did he ask for another kind of wisdom? Jeff.
He asked for enough wisdom to rule God's people.
Right.
That was what he didn't ask that he would be as wise as God, but he recognized that he said, I don't know how to come out or go in. That if you have humility, that comes with life.
Exactly.
But he wanted to be able to govern the people in a wise, just manner.
In a manner that would be pleasing to God, right? I mean, it's God's people, so he needs to know how God wants his people, how he needs to rule over his people. Okay? Because when you think about Solomon being wise, you have to kind of stop and ask yourself some questions. If he was so wise, why did he have so many wives? Why did he have so much stuff? I mean, I'm not trying to put myself in a hole, but there's a lot of questions to ask there. Ed.
The point you're raising is very important. In Deuteronomy chapter 17, God gave the law to Moses about how a king ought to operate. When he said that, he said, I don't want you to multiply wives, I don't want you to multiply horses, and he tells them to follow the law of God. And Solomon was wise, as Jeff said, in worldly wisdom and how to administer justice. But he was a abysmal failure in following God, leading to the divine kingdom.
Right.
And so, it's interesting. James is going to say that the wisdom that we're supposed to have is from above.
Wait, hold that thought.
Okay.
Don't steal my conclusion yet.
More stories.
Yes, definitely. So yeah, I mean, there's Al, go ahead. Sorry. Right. Correct. Understand what he wants and how he wants Solomon to rule his people. Yeah. And so God gives it to him, and on top of that, because Solomon was humble, he gave him all the other stuff to go with it. And he became Jeff, go ahead.
God gave him the other things because Solomon's request pleased him.
Yes.
God wants us to be wise. That's
Yes.
why Proverbs is in the Bible. Wisdom is a good thing to aspire to. Wisdom does not equal faithfulness. And,
Yeah.
It's faith, we have to have faith in the gospel to save us, not saved by our wisdom.
Right.
Wisdom is something to be desired.
You bring up Proverbs, and I have a whole bunch of Proverbs here that I was going to look at, but we don't have time to look at them. But between Job, Proverbs, and James, you could almost live on those three books. As if you want to learn more about God and more about wisdom. Because in Job 28:20, he says, from where then does wisdom come? And where is the place of understanding? And he answers in verse 28, he says, behold, the fear of the Lord, that is wisdom, and to turn away from evil, that is understanding. So we can see we need God. Yes. Right.
That's it.
Yeah.
And, you know, they didn't take that seriously. They're like, what can we do for ourselves?
Yeah, they kind of fall in that same rut again. Thank you, Aaron. Yeah. Yes. And Jeff, you talked about us asking for wisdom. And I know in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus is talking about a relationship with him. But we are told to ask. And there's a lot of things we can ask for. Ask God. Dennis, go ahead. Right. Yeah. Have the wisdom to know what wisdom to ask for. Exactly. Yeah. Jack.
It's interesting when we consider God's wisdom versus man's wisdom. And probably initially when I was studying the Bible, I thought about it, or other folks who don't study might think of it as like a better wisdom. But in fact, God's wisdom is on another level, and as many people have said, it's the source.
Mm-hmm.
It's like if you said, well, the sun is brighter than the moon, but actually what? The sun is the source of the moon's light. And in fact, the moon can go behind the earth and block itself out and have no light at all.
Right.
So, you know, it's not like one better than the other. I know that's what we use because of our language and that kind of stuff. But it's a whole other thing. It's the source.
Right. Yeah. His wisdom is the source of our wisdom. And like I said in the beginning, you don't have wisdom without having the knowledge, which is data. You got to have the knowledge, and you have to have the understanding. You have to have the know-how to use that wisdom. And where's the best place to get it? From God, right? So one of the things I was going to bring up too was, you know, how are our thoughts compared to God's thoughts? And there's a lot of writings on those, like Isaiah 55, 8 through 9, you know, your thoughts are higher than my thoughts. Let's turn over to Romans 11, 33. I got to hurry so I can get to the end here. Romans 11, 33. 33 through 36. Oh, the depths of the riches and wisdom and knowledge of God. How unsearchable are his judgments, and how inscrutable his ways. For who has known the mind of the Lord, or who has been his counselor, or who has given a gift to him that he might be repaid? So just as you're saying, Jack, it kind of solidifies the fact that God is the source. God is our source. James 3, 13 through 18. This is, I look at this as a contrast between man's wisdom and God's wisdom. James 3, 13 through 18. Who is wise and understanding among you? By his good conduct, let him show his works in meekness and wisdom. But if you have bitter jealousy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not boast and be false to the truth. That is not wisdom that comes down from above, but that is earthly wisdom, unspiritual, demonic. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. But wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, open to reason, full of mercy and good fruits, impartial and sincere. And the harvest of righteousness is sown in peace by those who make peace. So you see in these few verses the contrast between earthly wisdom and godly wisdom. So, kind of wrap things up, in the story of Babel, we see that man thinks that he is wise. He's trying to reach to the heavens to be like God, be over all things. God knew what was coming, and he saw that it wasn't good, and used his wisdom and power to stop man. There's nothing wrong with asking to be wise, to be a wise person, to have knowledge and understanding. God encourages us to ask for wisdom, just like in James 1:5, if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask God, who gives generously to all without reproach, and it will be given him. So the wisdom that we should have should align with God's wisdom and with the Scriptures. And to finish, I want to leave you with this thought in Ecclesiastes 12:13 and 14. The end of all the matter, all has been heard. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. For God will bring every deed into judgment with every secret thing, whether good or evil. So, no matter what we do as man, we need to have God. We need God to be our source of wisdom, and we need to follow his laws and his commandments. Appreciate everybody's comments and participation. Thank you very much.